Okay, so now it's finally time to discuss the actual novel now with my bias about it. I really enjoyed it for a start. At first I was like, oh, it seems a bit overdone, all this discussion about the correct pronunciation. Like, is this just something that people are getting really angry about and it's just a couple words? Like, is it really that big of a thing? But my preferred method of reading is the audiobook. And so I waited quite a while, like a couple months, because I was 449th in line to read it at my local library. There's an app, it's pretty good. But yeah, so I was waiting so long, and then I finally got it. I was finally reading it, and I must have listened to, creating my other video, I must have listened to the correct pronunciation of each of the characters and the names of things like 20 times. But having listened to the audiobook, where it is all wrong for 21 hours, please forgive me if I do pronounce them wrong, and that is bad. Like, that's not good. That's, like, considering how popular it is, considering how long you wait for it, and these like audiobook narrators are not paid to study languages. And who's to say that they didn't get that style guide of pronunciation from Yarros or her publishing team that are just perpetually putting out the mispronunciations? But then at the same time, it's gotten so popular, it is such a disservice to the language, because it is, I thought it would be mentioned a couple times, it wouldn't be that huge of a deal, it would just be a couple names. Like, you know, you have books where you do read it and you're like, that's wrong, that's not how I would pronounce it. Or like, you know, we were reading the Revan audiobook in the car on our way to Melbourne, Max and I, and it had which is like a Star Wars book. It was actually good, but yeah, they mispronounced the name of the ship, and like there's a video game where there's a voiceover and everything like that, so it's like you could have just looked at that to see how to say it right, and it was only a couple times, like very minimal. But yeah, Max, he nearly crashed the car because he was just like, ah! So angry that they'd gotten it wrong. Like, not really, but like he was quite mad, and I just can't imagine knowing the correct pronunciation and having that deep to your soul, like within the language that you study, and then it's just constantly wrong. Like, I would not, as I said, audiobooks are my preferred method of reading, and then I read the physical copy along with it and like highlight the parts that I like and things like that, and that's something that I really enjoy doing. But I would not be able to read the audiobook if it is like that, because it is almost every page has a mispronunciation. Like, it's all the main character names and things like that, like of the dragons, and it's just, oh boy, not great. One thing I would like to commend Rebecca Yarros for is that you do have, like, it's almost a mispronunciation on every single page, but that is because she puts so many characters onto a single page. And she utilizes different tools, and one that I've utilized in my book where the dragons communicate telepathically. And so it's through your mind, and it means the main protagonist is, their inner monologue is less monologue-y because it is kind of that conversation, and it means they can come in at any time, but she does that a lot and to a very high standard. And so it's really interesting, because most of the time they have this like classic thing where only two people can really be having a conversation together. And you know, if you have a group of four, it's more that, you know, people will go and separate, and that's more of a literary device, because it's just hard to have, you know, multiple people conversing at once. Like, it's just, you get confused, and you know, but the voices have to be super distinct to be able to pull off more than two people talking together. And this definitely has that, and this definitely has, you can tell who is speaking at all times. It's not even that it's particularly that good, you can just really tell, and it does that really well. So Yarros also spoke a lot in her talk about how the different love interests and like how they differed. So Dane would always stand in front of her because he believed that Violet was weak and fragile and needed protection, whereas Xaden would always stand to her side because he wanted to be next to her, tackling whatever it is in front of them together because he believed in her strength and everything like that. And I thought that was really beautiful for their relationship together. Like, it's just done so well, and she said that that was such a conscious effort on her part, and I really appreciate that. Okay, now to move on to some of the other points that I discussed in my first video. So the first one is about the smut and the nature of this book being adult. So from, I think it's page 11, Violet is having a discussion with her older sister, and it is very forced and very awkward. And I remember writing down at that point, this is so awkward, because she's literally discussing how, like, basically to Violet, you know, like, sleep with whoever you want, just don't sleep with anyone above your year, because you don't want people saying like, oh, you slept to get the position that you did and everything like that. And good, but also really strange just to come just like in the first, you know, few pages to come out with that. But at the same time, like, I'm not saying it was done well. Like, it obviously set up that, you know, it didn't set up the relationship between Violet and her sister very well at all. Like, you don't see any backstory with that. You don't think she's, I at least got the sense that she wasn't very involved in her sister's life because she hasn't been around much, but she does obviously care for her. And I'm not saying it was done well, but it definitely introduces the factor that there will be sleeping around in this book, and even her sister highly encourages it, just says don't sleep with anyone that's not a first year in your first year. Which, I'm gonna tell you, what do you think's gonna happen? You know? Like, I don't know, if you didn't expect sex to be in this book, and you didn't expect Violet to sleep with a third year, that's on you, man. Like, it was so obvious. And with books, in the first chapter, you have to set up the promises, and it does that. It sets up that promise very clearly. So yeah, and that's yeah, that is introduced on page 100, which is not even like, it's, you know, a quarter of the book. It's not this huge tease of a novel that, like, I'll read the next one for the actual scenes, Crescent City. But yeah, it said also within the book that Xaden is 23. So they're in that older bracket where, like, you're still young, you're still exploring, but you've had time to be in this more sexual space, basically. And they are at, you know, technically a university kind of thing, this academy. And it's, you know, it's interesting having this book set more from that perspective. And so we obviously assume Violet is kind of around that age, and Xaden definitely says that he's, you know, slept with people before, like that's something that he's done. And what I really respect about Violet is that she basically alludes to that as well, but she says none of your business. And I love that. It isn't anyone else's business, like what you've done and what's in your private life, and I really respect that. And you can kind of tell that Yarros is a mother of daughters. Like, the difference between how men and women are perceived by society based on those kind of factors is very different, and it's much harder, and you should really reserve that right as a woman, that it isn't anyone else's business. And I really like that, and I really respect that, and just in general too, like, it's your private and personal life. And yeah, and even Xaden doesn't go into specifics with his, like, I really appreciate that. There's no weird jealousy. There is a little bit, but then you learn that it wasn't really a thing anyway, and it's just not that important when that's something that a lot of people can focus on sometimes. Like, there was, you know, there's so much potential in that for drama, but Yarros just doesn't go there, and I really respect that. So that is probably my absolute favorite thing about Violet, that she has so much self-respect, and she is governed by such a stiff value system that is what she cares about, and she's so mature. Like, I freaking love it. Like, it's so good. So rarely do you get a character that places themselves higher, that, you know, is willing to stick up for what they believe in, but not just that, to have so much self-respect, even against, you know, the love interest and stuff like that. It's so good. And you know that girls at this age have such a trouble with that. Like, they, you know, they're just repeating some mantra in their head of like, oh, but I can fix it. No, no, stop. Like, don't. We know so many people. You know, don't fix him. Let him sort his own shit out. Guys need to go into relationships having sorting their bull out, like, and then they will respect you even more for it, because you're willing to respect yourself to that degree of like, nah, fix your stuff, then come back, you know. And Violet has that. She has that so integrally within her, and I freaking love it. Like, it's actually so good. Oh, I wish I read this ages ago. But yeah, and it's just, it's really wonderful. Xaden, okay, this is the main thing that I am referring to. Xaden at one point has this like classic line of like, oh, we can fuck and we can sleep together, but like, don't fall in love with me. And Violet, to absolutely her credit and self-respect, is like, no, like, these are bullshit terms for a sexual engagement for me, so no. And I love it. She's like, I can already feel myself falling for you. I kind of trust that you're also falling for me, so why would I sleep with you on those terms? If you wanna take me to your bed, you can fucking shut the hell up. I love it so much. She's just like, no, like, those are not the terms that I'm willing to agree with for this relationship. She's like, for the relationship that I want with you, I actually want there to be love involved, and she can already feel herself loving him, and I really value that. It's so incredible. And she also has a moment that I freaking love. She's they're in the bedroom, and she basically goes, you may be the boss out there, but in here we're equals. How badass is that? It's just, yeah, it is such a good book. And like, if you've watched a few reviews and stuff like that, you may think that you're kind of aware of all the big points to it and like all the plot turns and like things like that, which I encourage you to go into it with that kind of mentality, because that's what I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting this, I wasn't expecting that. Like, there is so much more to it, and even though I'm telling you a fair amount, there is so much to delve into with this book, and I really encourage you to do that. So another thing I spoke about in my controversies video was that I don't know who it was, but somebody had told me that there was like a lot of cultural appropriation within, like, that Xaden had like tribal tattoos. So all the children of the rebels were given what I imagine to be like a burn mark, given to them by a dragon, and so they walk around with like this curse or like rebel mark that signifies them as like, you know, that kind of traitor and things like that. So that's a thing. And then they also, each of the dragon riders get a tattoo by their dragon. So yeah, I really don't know where the cultural appropriation within that is, because it's so dragon centered. Like, that the dragons give you a tattoo and it's like of a dragon, and then there's just like a burn mark. And I don't know, I really don't know where the cultural appropriation is there, and I probably really can't talk about cultural appropriation tattoo kind of things right now, because I've just gone to my friend's wedding and she's from Sri Lanka, and she had this like henna party, so I got like these really beautiful henna designs on my hand, and they're all fading and I'm really sad, but I really love them, and it was so beautiful. It was such a lovely time, and she gave me a sari to wear as well, which was really fun, and I really enjoyed myself and I loved it. So that's a side note. And I've googled I've googled what the like art is for Xaden. He's more like an olive kind of complexion, and I think people have also had comments about that because I didn't see anywhere sort of alluding to that kind of fact. I think maybe it said like, but then it's also like he spent a lot of time out in the sun riding dragons. So I don't know if that's something that people are also more attributing that to, because that's a huge thing now that like, you know, you can't just have a darker skinned character but then not have that really apparent and have those like reasons and how their culture affects them then, and those kind of things. You can't just sort of whitewash them in a sense that like any of these characters to me could be any kind of shade because it wasn't particularly spoken about in my mind. So I didn't get that. I don't think that's a huge part of it, and I don't really think that was particularly what Yarros was going for. And I know that older sort of demographic of writers really have that sort of a kind of blank slate when it comes to tones, especially within fantasy, because it's kind of like, does it need to be said, or can someone reading this infer whatever skin tone or whatever they want on the characters? I don't know. I think it's really leading more into the newer kind of thinking where like you do need to give that cultural like understanding to each characters from where they're from, but fantasy is very tricky for it. So like, yeah, I don't know, but that's the thing maybe. Okay, now to go on to some other elements. The writing style. From the first chapter, I was impressed. Like, I was like, oh, this is actually really decent. But then I expected it to be trash. Like, I really expected it to be really horrid. And I was shocked then that it was very passably readable. The other thing I noticed with it a lot is that it's not flowery, it's not lyrical, it's not a literary masterpiece by any definition of the word. I think I can count on one hand the amount of uncliched metaphors used. It's very within that like chick flick kind of like, it's, you know, it's just easy read kind of thing. Like it's, you know, same metaphors, same similes. It's not anything new or unheard of, or like I'm like, oh, that line's really cool. It's just good writing. Like it's just done well, and she's written enough books to be able to do that. And I think that was kind of a well-designed plan because she's gotten all this hype around it, but then it's a very easy read as well. Another thing that really reminded me of her was that it's sort of this, I don't know how quite to explain it, but within fantasy authors, the male authors like Brandon Sanderson, I'm just going to use him as an example, his work is very like action focused, and you have like this happens, that happens, this happens, that happens. It's not flowery either, it's very like just focused and driven, and this is very much that. If anything, I have to like implore that like Rebecca Yarros is genius. Like it's so good. But the thing that she does so masterfully is pacing. Pacing is really, really hard, and she's got the pacing of epic fantasies sort of thing, but like even better because it's this really modern, half almost fanfic chick flick, and then half like modern fantasy kind of thing, where it's got such action, but then it's got this like spice within it. So I really love that. I think it's done that kind of bridge and crossover super well because the pacing is just phenomenal. Like, I don't know how to explain how hard it is to do pacing, but it's really hard. And she does it so well, and she does pressure so well. Like, within, like, this is just an example, within the start, she has this, you know, most of us will know that like the beginning of it is like she's crossing this parapet, and it's sort of like this balance beam over a canyon to get into the academy, and it's like, oh, that's rough, that's hard, you know, you have to carry your pack with you, you know, there's like people just fall off it to their death, they do it in the rain is the other thing. Like it's hard, and that is set up as being this like hugely difficult challenge. But then what Rebecca Yarros does that is this extra moment to it that she does all throughout it. Like this is why I read it in one sitting. Like you can't stop because of how well she does this. The next thing she adds to that is this guy, Jack, who's actively trying to knock Violet off it. So you have this horrible situation and circumstance, and then you have a person as well actively trying to chase her, to push her off it, and that just keeps you at the edge of your seat. Like, you are just, it's this rush for time and this rush for safety, and then it's in the rain and you can see her, like, you can feel her slipping, and it's just, it's done so well. And it doesn't start at that point, like it could have. That's a really interesting moment to start, but it did give that like extra start to kind of set up those other promises. So yeah, I think that's done super well. That it's just one thing after the next where you are just kept there, and that's the showmanship of a truly great author, to be able to, like, how much trouble can I give this character and still have them survive? Like, how much can I just have them scrape through? And it does that so well throughout the entire thing. Like, there are not spoilers that I've given you that I believe, because there is so much of that throughout, and it's done really, really well. Some other little extra things I really loved about this book was that I didn't know it actually had a magic system to it, which is really cool. Like, I was like, oh, there's dragons and like it does that, but it's not like wizards. But no, it is. It has a magic system to it, and I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was really neat and well done, and just an added element to it which made it really cool. So yeah, and Yarros is mega cruel, and I kind of love that. She spoke about that a little bit in her author talk as well, that she's just like, yeah, I know, I'm mean, I am, I'll confess it, but you guys love it, you love it, and I do.
I get it, fourth wing, like, hurt your feelings, and I know that, right? I got it. But like, by the time you pick up Iron Flame, it's consent. You knew what you were getting. If you keep coming back, it's on you.
I love it. I love it so much. It's so hard, but it's great. It's like whenever, it's like all the annoying characters are each given their turn to be, and I like that. But it's also whenever a character is too cocky and too happy in a life or death situation, like they're too excited about it, okay, and the whole thing is a life or death situation, but when you don't have that proper respect for the circumstances, when you have too much confidence and you don't have enough genuine fear and respect for the circumstances, that is when things go wrong, and that is when that character ultimately dies, which you hate because they're so happy. And then they just go. Oh, which is hard, but it's done well, and it does have that sort of thing that you're like, yeah, as soon as you start not respecting those sort of things, it can end badly. So yeah, there is also just some like a little bit of exciting news. There's some extra chapters. There is chapter 9 and chapter 16 from Xaden's perspective, and the whole thing is from Violet's perspective, apart from those two extra ones, and they're in this edition, the little black one, but they are also available for free on Yarros' website, which I thought was a really great idea. You can just Google them and then they're there, and I kind of like, I think you should read them while you're reading the book, so when you get up to, you know, chapter 8 stuff, and read those ones and things like that. I think that'd be cool. So yeah, yeah, that's about all I've got. I hope that works. And yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you next month. I'm about to go to Taiwan, which is exciting. So yeah, I'll see you guys. Okay guys, so just a bit of an update. I didn't want to release this film until I'd finished the second book in the series, Iron Flame, and so yeah, that's done now. Very interesting. I'm back from Taiwan now, and Onyx Storm is set to release on the 21st of January, and if you can hear that, that's the sound of the dog, which will be an upcoming video at some point. A little announcement. Max and I are hoping to do a lot more. Oh, he's eating paper. Okay, buddy, bro. Come here. Oh, come here. Oh, can you? Yeah, that's you, and that's my finger. So this is him. He's a menace. But I love him. So can you chill for a minute, bro? Otherwise I'm gonna put you outside with Max. Yeah? Yeah? Take this one. Yeah, good boy. Okay, so yeah, that'll be very fun. Where was I? Okay, so yes, and when having a look at the second book, I really wanted to try another, you know, audiobook from a different company and see bye. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to have a look at the second book and try a different audiobook. So I decided to try the cinematic version, because obviously then you have different voice actors for each of the characters, and I thought maybe now that there's more money invested into it and sound effects and all those kind of things, see if they get the pronunciations right. And no, none of them are right. Once again, it's all horrible. But somewhere between finishing the first book and buying the cinematic audio version, I forgot what the bulk of Fourth Wing is about. Yeah, a lot of sound effects for things I wasn't exactly anticipating or expecting, and I'm on this tour with all these people, and I'm gonna do some more videos about Taiwan and the tour because it was an incredible experience. I have one on my YouTube, but I'll do some more and things like that. But on the bus rides and the long car trips, I was, you know, listening to this audiobook, mostly with my head in my hands and like trying to skip this because it's all and smutty sound effects. So yeah, that was fun. I forgot about that one. I'll keep that one in the old noggin for when I want to listen to a Smut audiobook again, because that wasn't the greatest plan. But yeah, it was cool and it was fun. Definitely book one is the best, but I'll definitely read Onyx Storm. So yeah, hey, thanks guys, bye.